Dick, when were you in Upper Volta?
I was there from 1970 to 1972.
And what was your job?
Well, I originally went to work heavily in basketball, of all things. They had plans for the Pan-African Games, and they were going to field, at that time, an Upper Voltan team. And the Pan-African Games wound up being postponed, so I worked still with some men's teams during the evening, and I worked with quite a few school teams while I was there. But I also got into some English teaching, sort of after the fact. Did conversational English the first year, and then got some official training during the summer of the first year I was there, and then went into some heavier English teaching the second year.
Mm-hmm. Were you teaching in the schools?
Yes, strictly in the lycées.
What age?
Oh, about 10 to 13. Mm-hmm. Had a few different levels that I was teaching.
What are the Voltaic school kids like? What are they like?
They're a very disciplined group. I think their classes are much more rigid than ours have become. So in that sense, you have total respect in that sense, which I think a lot of American teachers would like to see more of in our environment. They are very respectful of the teachers. They're good learners. They're interested learners. Even with limited materials that sometimes they had, they still wanted to learn English and would often do some extracurricular work of whether it's American songs or just some material that they found in English. They were always anxious to learn more. So I found them very receptive learners.
Where did you live?
I had a house supplied by the school. So compared to the people that were working in agricultural wells, I had a pretty easy life in the city, and Bobo Dialasso was a beautiful city. So I had a cement house with my own shower. I mean, I had all the comforts almost of home, pretty close to home. So it was a very convenient location.
And what is Bobo like?
Bobo is about the best climate I think anyone could have devised. And I think the original French saw that. They had big plans for making that sort of their regional capital, because it didn't have the real intense heat of Ouaga, and yet it didn't have the humid conditions of further south into the Ivory Coast. So it was really just an ideal, lush place with a marketplace that always had everything you could possibly want for vegetables, a great variety of vegetables, because it was such a large market and such pretty much a fertile area as well. So Bobo was just a delightful city to live in, and I very seldom even went up to Ouaga, because I think by comparison I always enjoyed Bobo even more.
Let me just ask you about the basketball. Did you bring basketball to Upper Volta, or was it?
No, not by any means. In fact, there was a very successful coach in Bobo before I got there. So no, they had players. In fact, they had some excellent players. One fellow had played with when he was in West Germany, so he had played with GIs there, so he had a real good sense of the game. But a lot of the school kids were real beginners, and it was funny because any one of them could have probably come over here and been a soccer coach in a minute, because they grew up with that game. But they did not know basketball very well, and I didn't have great skills, but compared to what they had, I could at least offer them something, having grown up with basketball myself. So I thought the contrast between the two sports was interesting. A couple of times I tried to play soccer, and very humbling experience.
I remember kids running around barefoot playing soccer. I mean,
well, the kids, many of the players we had, even though we had a macadam court, many of the kids played barefoot, and so they had some tough conditions, but they were tough kids, and they worked hard at it.
Tough feet.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Do you ever think about going back to Burkina Faso?
I threaten my wife with that every once in a while, because she's never been outside the country, and certainly never been anywhere in a developing country. So she has no idea what to expect. But yes, I could see myself at some point heading back. Although I think I would go back in something other than the academic field. I think certainly Burkina has their own resources now for certainly English teachers and all the other academic subjects. So I would probably want to go back in something similar to what you worked in, whether it's well digging, agriculture, something that can help at a level where you can meet the people at the local village level as opposed to a city level. I think that would be a very different experience.
I think I would probably do it the other way. I'd like to go back and visit my village, but to the age I am now, I think I'd much rather live in Bobo Dialasso. Right.
That may be easier for me to say that here than when you get there.
Well, the wives would have something to say about that. What would you do if you went back? If you went back as a visitor?
The first thing you'd have to do is try to find as many of the people you worked with as possible, because I think that was the real link. I mean, you did the job, whatever that job might have been, but the link was the people that you knew, the friends that you made. So that would be the first thing you'd have to work on, is to actually meet those people, and then secondly, invite them out to some of the local restaurants, which you hope have not changed at all from the days you remember them, because those are the kind of things that you cherish as much as anything, the times you spent just socializing with the friends you made.
Did you make a lot of friends with voltaics?
Yes. Mostly the men's basketball players were the people that I spent the most time with, and I had a young boy that worked for me, and we became real good friends. One of the advantages, of course, of living in the city there was that you had a movie theater nightly, so we used to take in a lot of the movies, and enjoyed seeing the movies with him, and seeing his reaction to the movies, and comparing my own reactions to the different movies and the translations of the movies. So,
what would you get from movies?
Got a decent amount of spaghetti westerns, the Italian and Spanish westerns. We got an occasional American film, and it was interesting that it just wouldn't translate. For instance, I remember one of the classics was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which I was all excited about seeing, but when you got the translation, it just didn't make it. There was a scene in Butch Cassidy where there's a tracker coming across rocks, and the two actors say, I couldn't do that. How can he do that? Can you do that? And it was just translated, did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see that? And it just, it really didn't, and of course it didn't get any of the laughs that we recalled it getting in the States. So it just showed you that a lot of things don't translate.
I remember going to open-air movie theaters in Ouagadougou and seeing American movies with French subtitles, but they left the English dialogue in.
Was it all right? No, I don't recall ever having any of the English dialogue. That would have been interesting.
Actually, it was a musical. Maybe it was a French dubbed dialogue, but English songs with French subtitles. It was just confusing as hell.
You didn't need to deal with that.
Yeah.
The other thing that struck me was the snacks you could get at the movies, that instead of having just candy, which you did have some of, you had women with fresh fruits and pineapples and things, and it was just a real treat compared to just the canned stuff that we get here at our movies. So I thought that was always great. It was like an extension of the marketplace at the movies, so a real delight.
Bobo's a wonderful town.
I had some friends from Bonfora that would come up on occasion, and they always said I underappreciated the market at Bobo, because they would always come and buy these fruits and vegetables, some of which I'd buy, some I wouldn't, and they always appreciated Bobo.
Did you do any traveling while you were in West Africa?
Not a great deal, other than going to Bonfora, which was about 20 or 30 miles south of Bobo, which was also a pretty area. We did take one big trip, a group of us, to Niamey, and that was enjoyable, taking the truck travel all the way across, and spending the night at the border, because you always arrive after the customs agents have closed, so you had to just stay overnight, and that was a real challenge, just putting together enough sleeping accommodations on the ground. But it was great. I mean, you talk about wide open spaces, you're right there on the ground. Some of the guys sleeping, next to the truck to get the heat of the truck engine, and it surprised you because you got cool. Not as cool as we are here, but you got cool comparatively. So those kinds of trips brought you a lot closer in touch with what was happening.
And you rode on a truck all the way to Niamey.
Right.
In the back.
Right. And a real outdoor experience. It really really interesting. You made the typical stops for the prayer stops for the Muslims, and you just really lost that sense of rush, and you just settled down and said, we'll be on here until we get to our destination, and that's it. It was,
Yep.
The other thing that struck me and that I was thinking of recently was the times when you walked through the streets was when you really learned the most. You'd hear more of the sounds, and you'd pick up the aromas of the different things that were cooking. And if you rode a bicycle, you passed it that much quicker. When you were on a moped, you drowned out all the sounds with that. And then, fortunately, you never had a car, so you didn't lose it. But I realized how much each one of those levels takes you away from just really...
What sorts of sounds and smells? What would you experience walking down a street?
Everything, I guess, from... You always heard the sounds of women pounding millet. That seemed to be one of the constant sounds you'd hear. And a number of women and men, street vendors that would sell both the sort of an equivalent of a donuts or some products, eating products, and the sounds of the aromas of the various meals that they'd be putting together. And it was just something that was unlike any of the aromas you had here, and you knew that you were the visitor there, and you just learned to cherish that feeling.
I think you've really hit on what it was. A total sensory experience. You feel the heat, and every one of your senses is alive there.
Yeah, that's true.
In a way that they're not here. We're cut off from how things smell and what they sound like here.
That's true, and so much of it here is just wrapped things, whatever it is, and packaged things. And there, when you go to the marketplace, you've got real fresh vegetables. I mean, you're talking about something that came out of the garden that morning, and yeah, that's true. It is a total sensory experience. I agree.